All right. So, welcome to another Sinister Scripts podcast episode. I am joined, as always, by my host, David.
What's going on, fellows, guys, gals?
And today we've got a special collaboration today with which we're going to call Sinister Madness. So, we've got Sinister
Mm.
Scripts podcast, and we've got Matthew Myers joining us from Horror Madness. You may have seen his videos on TikTok. So, say hello, everybody, Matthew.
Hey guys, nice to be on. First podcast, so I'm very excited to be on here. You guys can find me on TikTok under Horror Madness 0055. Also on Instagram under the same name. Very excited to be on here. A part of Cinema Society Saturday. If you follow the hashtag on TikTok, and also recently been a brand partner for Fear Picks, which is a new streaming service that I am excited to rep. So very excited for all these projects, and also very excited to join the Sinister Scripts podcast to talk about Tony Todd today.
Yeah,
Hell yeah, we're glad
absolutely.
to have you on, man.
Yeah, appreciate you joining. And so let's go through a little bit about you and how you kind of got your start on your TikTok channel. You've I've watched you kind of really blow up over the past 6 months, and your following has increased. And like I said, like you mentioned, you've been a great brand partner to help us with the Fear Picks relationship. And you've been one of the originals from Cinema Society Saturday. I joined later, and then David came on, and so we're hoping to kind of keep this thing rolling. Hopefully one day you don't get too big for us where you leave us behind. But yeah, how did you get your start? Is this just, I mean, just a horror fan who said, you know what, I'm gonna make a run at this and just been having a good time? How'd that start for you?
Well, it's crazy. It started about 11 months ago. My wife actually was saying you should get on TikTok. I used to post like horror movie reviews on Facebook. And she's
Mhm.
like, I was like, nah, dude, I'm too old for TikTok. That's for them young kids. And you know, if you go back, man, my first review was on Saw 10, and I'm like looking at a script and looking back and forth. I have zero editing skills. And I'm like, this isn't for me. And I actually started having some it's funny, some people latched on, some bigger creators than me, and they actually started reaching out to me and saying, hey man, I'd really like to see you grow. And I was impressed. And that's when I knew. I was like, okay, I really like the horror community, and I want to do the same for other people. And that's just who I am. That's the person I am, is like, I want to help people. I want to see people grow, and I want to continue seeing growth in that community. And it's just funny. It's wild. Probably about 4 or 5 months ago, I just started hitting the right chord, I guess. And I think, yeah, I was like maybe 400 people, and now all of a sudden I'm over 2,400 followers, and just impressed by the growth and the amount of people that I've met over that time. So yeah, it's been a wild ride. But I'd say my first horror movie I ever watched, and I begged my parents. I was 6 years old, and it was Predator. So in 19, so that was a good one to start. I remember I watched that movie, and I had nightmares probably for weeks, and then I was just hooked after that one. So, but the 80s is my favorite decade. I I just love practical effects, and I just think that was the birth of practical effects and just what we had to buckle up for. So
Absolutely.
absolutely.
That's pretty funny. As I feel like that's what definitely what you and I have bonded over is like, man, 80s creature features, practical effects. And that's also, and I don't know if I've told you, Matthew, but my wife Melissa and David's wife Lynn are like really, really close friends. And so that's how David and I met. They were like,
Yeah.
you know what, you guys are very similar. Like, y'all ever thought about, like, you sit around and you talk about movies, why don't you like put a microphone in front of you and just shoot the shit? And that's kind of how Sinister Scripts got founded.
Yep.
But that's how David and I kind of bonded too. We were like, man, we kind of like a lot of these same like 80s, even into 90s, because we're going to talk Candyman today, but like the older films that we feel like they don't get, they're not made the same way anymore, even. Um, but obviously we dabble in the newer stuff as well. Like, we want to, because obviously, your fans, your followers, subscribers, everything, they want to see old, new, a mixture of everything. You don't want to like pigeonhole yourself. So it sounds like
Exactly.
we've
Yeah.
got the right group here on the call to talk about Candyman and to talk
Mhm.
about Tony Todd and his film career because it kind of how it started. So before we do, I want to know what your favorite horror movie is. So your Predator was your first one that you saw like when you were young. What's your favorite horror movie where kind of like I always say, and it's weird that it's like this for me, but the one movie like when it comes on all the time, no matter where it is in the movie, if I'm flipping through the channels and it's on, if it's at the beginning, the middle, or the end, I always watch is Shawshank Redemption. I don't know why. It's a great movie. It's not a horror movie,
It's
but
always on TNT
that
or
too, but
TBS or whatever.
that one and Jaws. Jaws is the other
Yeah.
one that I always am like, all right, I'm gonna watch this shit, whether it's December or whether it's July. So, what is your favorite? Like, always gonna watch it every single time.
The definitive movie for me, and it's gonna be a horror movie. It's gonna be a body horror. It's The Thing. The
Yes.
the
Yes.
and you know the reason why for this movie, and there are certain movies that I just mark as a masterpiece, but from the score, the acting, I mean, this is just practical effects still hold up to this day, and then that ending. And when you make an ending that's so grim and it's just subjective to the viewer's perspective,
Yep.
everything about that is perfection in my opinion, and it was delivered so masterfully by John Carpenter that it's one of those movies that I can sit down no matter where I've come into it, and I've watched it so many times that it doesn't matter where I land in the movie, I can fit in and it's comfortable for me. And
Absolutely.
it's just a fantastic movie in my opinion.
It's a masterpiece for sure.
I
Yes.
I agree, and I would. So it was funny at the camp out with Charlie's scout group. We're sitting around the fire after the kids had gone to sleep, and there was a guy there who was a horror movie fan. We're talking, and ultimately the question came up. There's about six of us, and that was, what is John Carpenter's masterpiece? Because that's a really hard answer, and I feel like I know where David leans. I'll let him answer, but I'm very, and I feel like I know where you might lean, Matthew, based on your answer just now, and I'm curious to see like how do you separate that? Because you've got Halloween, which is
hmm
a 10
Another
out of
fucking
10 absolute
yeah.
masterpiece, maybe the birth of the modern slasher, maybe, in one of the most iconic characters to ever be created. And then you've
Yep.
got The Thing just a few years later, right? So I'm like, how do I like for me, I'm like, is this 1A and 1B? Can I even separate them? I don't know what I'd pick. One day I'll pick The Thing, another day I'll pick Halloween. So I'm
Yep.
curious what you guys think as far as what's John Carpenter's masterpiece.
I mean, yeah, that is hard to say, man, because like when we did that Halloween bracket of death or whatever, didn't the thing ended up winning? You and I had talked about it around and around and around, and it ended up beating out Halloween.
Right.
So yeah, you're right. Like I love Halloween. That's my favorite horror movie of all time. But I mean, it's hard with the thing, man. Like there's so much cool shit in that movie that it is like it's either 1A, 1B, but they're interchangeable. You can swap them out at any time, I think. Like they're just
Interesting.
both
Yeah,
perfect.
I agree. I agree with you 100%. And I think interesting to me is like The Thing is much more like it's number one. It's more science fiction horror, and it's
Obviously,
definitely
yeah.
it's definitely got more like gore and violence. Like it's definitely a bloodier movie. Like the original Halloween, there's almost no blood at all, right?
Right, yeah.
But so I feel like they are different. And it's hard to be like oh like because one is traditionally the slasher horror, one's more of your science fiction absolutely horror. But I'm just
Yeah.
like I don't know. Like there's so many things. Like I've watched the what is it the movies that made us. I don't know if you guys have
Yeah.
seen that one where they did
Yes.
the
On
Halloween episode,
Netflix.
and you
Yeah.
keep learning all this stuff that happened behind the scenes on how this movie was almost never made and how it was almost so different.
Yep.
And I've seen
hmm
similar documentaries on The Thing, and I'm just like, from the score that you mentioned, Matthew, with I'm gonna butcher his name, but it's Ennio Morricone, I think, um, who is just a brilliant sound person who's done all kinds of like the credits to his name as or to his list is very long, but
Yeah.
when David and I went in the theater and saw The Thing this year, and like being able to turn off your phone and completely immerse yourself in that experience was unbelievable.
It
Like,
was fantastic.
so yeah, on like I feel like out of 7 days, on like 4 days I might pick one, and on three 3 days I might pick the
And then
other.
it'll change the next week.
Yeah,
They're gonna change from three to
yeah.
four. So
So, in my opinion, I think John Carpenter, and I might be biased because he's my favorite director of all time. I think in his time he has four tens and in different genres. So slasher, cosmic horror, horror comedy, and political satire. So that would be Halloween, The Thing, They Live, and Big Trouble in Little China. I think
Yeah,
all of those are 10s. They are
mhm.
just masterpieces in my opinion.
I
I
think
100% agree.
I think you just nailed it. And how many like how many can say that? Like that's ridiculous. Like when like he's gonna go down in history as one of like apps. I mean, he already is one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest of all time. But I mean, that's just like he's had a ridiculous run. I'll give him credit. There's some others that I come to think of. I think Ridley Scott deserves to be up there on that list when it comes to cosmic horror, obviously. But there's
Mhm.
there's there's some others I think are up there. But man, that's John Carpenter is definitely a legend. So cool. All right. Well, I know we kind of chatted a little bit about, you're getting your. We could probably go forever and ever and talk about John Carpenter, but
Yeah.
I came here today to talk about Tony Todd since he just passed away. What has it been about a week now?
Yep.
I
Um,
think,
I was,
yeah.
yeah, we were all very sad to see that he is a horror legend, and so the movie we came to kind of sit and discuss is 1992's Candyman. I know they remade it, a couple years ago. And we can talk about that one. I feel like as we kind of segue into it, but let's first start with the original Candyman, which I mean we probably all agree is probably Tony's best work. Um,
Mhm.
I like I said, coming off of it like 30 minutes ago, just watching it again, I'm still. It's almost like my brain's reprocessing it all. And I think
Right.
that it's almost it's it's so old, but it's almost more appropriate now with all of the like the racial issues that film tackles with Cabrini Green, which being from Illinois, like I'm very familiar with that housing project and no longer there now. But I've got very nostalgic watching like all of the overhead scenes of Chicago, like old Chicago. Like Chicago has changed a lot since then, but
Right.
it's definitely made me think of home and like yeah, Cabrini Green. Like they weren't joking. Like people were like, oh, it's just like they're trying to hype up this this project for for the movie to make it dangerous. Like no, like that was. I love how they tie this into like trying to I know that whether they call it now, they're going to call it wokeism. You know what I mean? Like, oh, like, and even if you Google Candyman, the first article that came up for me was like how a woke film from 1992 is now even more relevant today. And I was like, well, yeah, because not a whole lot has changed since then,
Right.
assholes.
Yeah.
Like, um, so for those of you who aren't familiar in the listening audience, Candyman, is a film that is a couple of graduate students that are doing a dissertation or a thesis on urban legends, and this urban legend of the Candyman, who was apparently responsible for the murder of what was her name? It's like Ruby Ann something or other. Sorry, I've got it. I took some notes here. I'm gonna pull them up.
Come on, man. Get your shit
Ruthie
right.
Ruthie Jean. Ruthie Jean. She was the murder of a woman named Ruthie Jean who was a resident at Cabrini Green, and they claimed that she was the Candyman's victim. And so Helen and her friend Bernadette start doing this research, and they find out that there's 25 other murders in the area that are similar, and so they start doing this investigation. And so um, they go to dinner one night with some. Her husband is a professor, which I never caught this earlier on that like they're married, but I'm pretty sure that he was like sleeping with one of his students, and that's who she is. Because obviously
Mhm.
later on in the movie we find out that he's just kind of a sleaze bag,
A
right?
piece of shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, we come to find out that from another professor that Candyman, the legend goes all the way back to he was a talented artist, and he was like back in I forget the date was like the 1800s or something.
I think
He was
something like that, yeah.
commissioned to draw the virgin beauty of a rich, probably white aristocrat, right? And he fell in love with her, and he was unjustly murdered, where they chopped off his hand, and then they covered him with honeycomb, and the bees swarmed and killed him, and then they burned him like on a pyre. So
Yeah.
basically, he was lynched, is what it got down to. He was unjustly killed, and this is supposedly the Candyman is this ghost that comes back and is kind of taking some of his revenge. So I want to stop there and get y'all's kind of thoughts, because the first intro to this movie is them doing these interviews with all these different people that have heard the legend about Candyman.
I mean,
Mhm.
this movie for me is still just absolutely iconic. I mean, I know we talked about it a little bit before we went on, but for for me, loving 80s slashers, being a 90s slasher, this thing is just absolutely iconic to me. I thought that Tony Todd was absolutely terrifying. And there's
Mhm.
still scenes that live rent free in my brain from this movie. And his performance is just, I mean, if he had never done all the hundreds of other acting credits in his career, he would have been an icon just for this movie alone. And that's how effective his performance was in this movie. Um, but you go through and you just start looking at the mythos with this movie. I mean, like, and I won't say all the things because I'm sure y'all have other things to talk about. Like, I remember seeing this years ago, but he signed an exclusive contract that for every time he got bit by a bee, he'd be paid an extra $1,000, and they said he got bit like 23 times by a bee. And that's boss level. I mean,
Yeah,
that's awesome. so so I love that.
that is
I
killer.
mean, yeah, I mean, I just so the thing about this movie is we don't get a glimpse of him for a bit. Like it's probably like half over. Like this is, and that's what I kind of appreciate. I feel like more times than not these days, you're getting these. Everything's ruined in the trailer. We can talk about Abigail, where they're like, "Oh,
Yeah,
good, like, hey, the little girl's a vampire. Like, why do I need to see this movie now?" Same kind of thing, and that's what I love they're doing with Nosferatu right now. Is they're not giving us a glimpse of Skarsgård as Nosferatu just yet. That's going to be a surprise. So I appreciate them kind of building this tension as Helen is going and doing this research for her thesis, and kind of just giving you the lore that's been passed down. And I think that's kind of the idea, because if you listen to the dialogue from Tony Todd, where he's like, "My congregation has to stay strong," and his congregation is fear. It's the fear. It's the legend of him, where
mhm,
he had to commit these. The ghost had to commit these crimes and these murders because he needed people to be afraid. He needed the people of Cabrini Green to be afraid and to believe the legend. Otherwise, it's kind of, I mean, if you kind of think about it, like with Freddy Krueger, right?
yeah.
If you're not
That's
afraid
just
of,
what I was
you
thinking.
don't
Yeah,
believe in him and you're not afraid of him, he doesn't have any power. I kind of got the same vibe from Candyman, where he needs that lore to live on and be immortal, which he alluded to several times. So as she's kind of coming putting these pieces together, I thought that was an interesting point where he I almost found myself rooting for him, even though he's the bad guy. And like at the end, when he was like, "Hey, if you give yourself to me, the baby will be safe," right? But then he's like,
yeah,
"Duh, tricked you, bitch." Like
yeah.
I was like, "Why would you? You never don't believe the Candyman." But like, just they do a really good job, I thought, of like the sinister, like keeping the tension level high, because here you are, and they stress this a lot with a white woman going into Cabrini Green, and they're like, "You don't want to go," like, and then kind of when they pull up in the car and they're getting hassled by all of the people in the yard, like, "Where are you going?" And they're getting catcalled and all this stuff, like building all of that, like kind of in addition to the fact that they're there to search for evidence of this mythical murderer, they're dealing with real life horror of being a person of the opposite skin color who's not supposed to be in an area at that time, right?
Right.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I mean that's what I like about movies that are ahead of their time. And that's why I think not only was that movie appreciated, which it was super successful at the time, but also just grew as a cult following in general. Like that's when you have a hit. But what's so perfect about this movie is not only was it based off a story from another horror icon, Clive Barker, but you also have a real life story from Cabrini Green, which, there was also what perfectly forms this movie is there was a murder in Cabrini Green, and it was stated that the lady who was murdered said when she went on the police records said that someone was crawling out of her mirror and was attempting to kill her, and they found her dead the next day. So blending in Clive Barker's story with that murder in Cabrini Green and then Candyman and how it formed, like this movie has so much mythos about it, and it's still so effective. And the more you dig, the more terrifying this movie truly is.
Exactly. I agree. And like
Absolutely, yeah.
as the movie progresses, remember she goes back to Cabrini Green and then she meets the little boy, Jake, who says that there was the incident with the Candyman and a developmentally disabled boy who was castrated by in the public bathroom, and she goes in there, and that scene really bothered me. I felt I could smell that bathroom. It looked like doo-doo was on the walls. Remember it said like sweet something or other, and I was like, man,
Oh
this
god.
bathroom like so so she just goes into that bathroom and she opens up the toilet and it's all the bees.
Hmm.
Yep.
That was cool as hell because like I mean back then like I felt like I don't know that they use real bees, but I'm assuming that they use. I mean, you said Tony got stung a bunch of times, so I'm assuming that they use real bees for a lot of these scenes. Was kind of crazy. And then there was the guy that claimed to be the Candyman, right? He comes in there with the hook and he attacks her, and the little boy Jake saves her, and it turns out that he was the head of a local gang. So you kind of got like this like the community of Cabrini Green almost embracing the Candyman, at least the
If that was,
criminals embracing
yeah.
the Candyman legend, and basically using that to their advantage, right? I
Hmm.
thought that was kind of an interesting take, because that was really the first time when we see Tony Todd, is because after she leaves, gets attacked, she's leaving and she sees him in the parking garage where he like, and that's the other thing I wanted to ask, is he, I want your guys' take. Was he like, it's almost like he hypnotized her, right? Like
That's what I, yeah.
he like
That's why I
hypnotized
always took
her,
it. Yeah.
commits these murders, and then puts them in situations where like essentially it looks like they did it. Or are they actually doing it? Or is he hypnotizing them to do it? What are your
Oh,
thoughts?
it's almost like it's like those horror movies that are like a little erotically charged. You get kind of a theme there with that. Because obviously with how it ends and everything like that, how it was like, kind of embrace me and everything, like, and then you said the aha at the end and everything like that. And but yeah, I agree. It's almost like he's almost taking her over, like to keep his what did you say earlier? His congregation going and everything like that. But there's like so many like subtleties in this movie that hit. But yeah, I think definitely he's trying to like possess her or take her over in some way or form.
And that's why I like going back to like what you said about the thing. The fact that we're still talking about the ending of the thing all these years later. It's movies like this where we're asking these questions that are they're thought provoking, where we're trying to
Yeah.
figure out, was it actually like, because Candyman for all intents and purposes, like he's a ghost. There's no like, it's from
Right.
the 1800s. This person, the physical body is no longer living. It's not possible. So when you start talking about that, we start talking about, are they a ghost? Are they a demon? Are they, the spirit? Whatever. Like those are the options. So in
Right.
most cases, now there are horror films where ghosts, demons, apparitions can actually harm people, but usually it's got to be they have to, like you said, they have to control the host. And so that's why I'm like, okay, was it actually the ghost doing these things and being like, I'm blaming it on this lady because I'm taking over her body and making her black out? Or, and I think it's
Hmm.
more likely, is he is controlling her, like she's the vessel and he's making her do these things, and as a result, that's why, she when she comes to, she's covered in blood and she's committed these
Right.
crimes. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. But like I said, the fact that we can have the conversation, I think, is probably exactly what they were going for when they created the character.
Yeah. No, that's how I always remembered it. Like, because like I said, I hadn't seen this movie in a long time, so that's kind of how I always took it as, is like he was possessing her almost and
Yeah,
having her do everything.
right.
That's how
And
I always took
I agree with you. I think that probably makes the most sense, but
it.
maybe, I
Hmm.
mean, but once again, tomorrow maybe my opinion will differ. But
Yeah.
I,
You never know.
I also like the like what I call like the descent into madness. I feel like all of these movies have this descent into madness where the main
Hmm.
character slowly kind of gets is more and more off their rocker. We see it time and time again, but after her scumbag husband bails her out of jail and she's looking through the photographs and she sees Candyman in some of the photos that she took at Cabrini Green. That's when he breaks into her apartment, cuts her neck. She passes out, and then that's when her friend Bernadette gets, hacked to pieces, right?
Yep.
And then she's framed for the crime, so she thinks, and she gets committed to the psychiatric hospital. And I feel like this is the point where the film like really like put the pedal to the metal, because I was like, I don't want to say it was slow, but it was building so much of that backstory and the legend of the character. And then like at
Hmm.
this point, they're like, all right,
Kid
people are
gloves are
dying
off.
left and right, and is she crazy, is she not crazy? And so I really liked how at that point, yeah, she gets interviewed with the psych warden or whatever, and then she's like, I can show you, I'll call him. And then she calls him and he freaking hacks old dude up and jumps out the window. I was like, oh shit, like
Right.
so I mean I can appreciate like them finally like, because to me like I like a slow burn but not everybody does, so at some point you got to step on the gas a little bit, right? And I
Yeah,
feel like at
give it a
the
little
end they
bit.
really did that. Just my thought.
Well, see, I think that was a good, but see, that's where I question sometimes where a movie like where they are building like, and I agree, like certain movies like. I wish I could remember the name. It's almost perfect for Candyman 2, where it builds. Oh, it was like Smile 2. Like I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that way with Smile 2. It's like is that it's possessing you to, and you're doing the things that you're doing in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But Candyman, it's like that scene particular in the hospital. Obviously, she's been stripped of any type of weapon. There's no way she could have anything. So
Right.
she summons Candyman. He comes from behind him, obviously just eviscerates him and throws him out the window. And it's like, how was she able to do that? And that's where sometimes it causes those blanks in the movies. But you know what? We're all there for it because we're horror fans and we want to see Tony Todd just rip someone apart, you know?
Exactly.
I also never caught in that scene that after he killed the warden, he undid her restraints.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if someone comes in there, it looks like she was free and attacked this guy like that.
Attack.
Like,
Yeah.
and then each time I noticed that, like when people were being murdered, like remember she woke up and then had got the cleaver and
Yep.
the when after the so she had that and she got arrested with the knife, and then at the end it happens again. We'll talk about that here in a few minutes, but once Candyman frees her and she leaves and she goes back to her apartment, that scene where she finds like Trevor's student like repainting the apartment was super
Mhm.
uncomfortable.
Right.
And that's why I said I was like, okay, I feel like she was the first like whatever graduate student that slept with their
Mistress.
professor and they
Yeah.
got married, and now because she's kind of like, oh, like tell me about her, and she's like, are you worried? And she's like, no, of course not. Like I think we kind of see that he was that guy, and he pretty much was like, "All right, she's crazy. We're having her committed, and now I'm going to go with this like 19-year-old something, whatever."
Time to start over. Yeah.
Which, by the way, as like a happily married man, like that seems like a freaking lot of work. Like a
Right.
19 or 20-year-old graduate student, like I don't have the patience to like have a conversation with someone like that.
Absolutely not.
So there, yeah, that's when Helen confronts him and she kind of basically flees back to Cabrini Green to try to rescue Anthony. And I think this is like the kind of what we'll call the ending set of scenes, where I feel like it's kind of like a redemption arc, right? Like she realizes that she is too far like down this path and there may not be
Mhm.
any coming back for her, but she wasn't like from the beginning she was never going to let the baby anything happen to the baby, right? So the one thing that was interesting, like whenever she finds Candyman in his like, I guess lair, it's like like, he's like on that table, and
Mhm.
like if he's controlling her, this is all like in her mind. There's nothing really there, right? Like she's just making this is all her what she's envisioning this to be.
Could be. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's when the deal gets made when Helen says I'll surrender, and that's what you were kind of talking about, Matthew, with like this little bit of this eroticism, because like he's like if you surrender yourself to me, Anthony will be safe, and he offers her immortality. And that's when that's the coolest scene in the movie when he opens his coat and he's got the rib cage
Yeah.
and the bees and then the bees in his mouth, and like that is gnarly, and I didn't know that he had that in his contract about getting stung, but good for him because I wouldn't want to have like bees in my mouth, like
No. Fuck
regardless of how
no.
like docile these bees are, or like oh
Yeah.
that we
Still no.
yeah we smoked them out with our little smoke guns and they're calm now. I don't think so, Scooter.
Yeah.
Like those things are still going to sting your ass.
Fuck that.
But that, I mean, I'd like to understand. I want to go back and like I'm going to start googling like little outtakes because I'm sure that was not an easy part. But yeah, that's kind of that eroticism because he kisses her and then he vanishes with the baby and he's like, "We've got a bigger plan for you." And that's when you kind of knew that he's probably not going to stick to his end of the bargain for this whole deal. Um, and then that's when she wakes to find that mural of Candyman and his lover, which looks an awful lot like Helen,
Mhm.
which I
Yep.
think is like, the foreshadowing, right?
Yep.
And then we've got the end scene, which is really, before I jump into like the I'll call it the funeral pyre because it's like the giant bonfire. You guys have anything on that scene with the like finding Trevor with his student and then like the bees scene with the mouth? Any like what are you? I mean, if you guys have any input there, I don't want to just be all the talking here.
No, I
So
mean, I'll always remember that scene, just the opening of the coat and the bees coming out of the mouth. Like, I'll always remember that after seeing the movie for like the first time when I was a kid. Like, that image will never go away. It's such a fantastic image. I love it so much. It's
yeah,
imprinted in my brain.
yeah. Like as for speaking for earlier with scenes that live rent free, but I do have to revisit the. Speaking of Trevor with the student, that's the absolute symbolism of not waiting till the paint dries.
Both figuratively and literally.
Damn.
Like seriously, and I know it was later in at towards the end of the movie, but like who cooks dinner in what she was wearing? Remember, she was like wearing like it was like a lacy shirt and no bra, and it was like 30 degrees in that room. Like she had some major like yeah, the high beams were on, and I was like, and she was like, "Hey, let's go cook a nice dinner." Like who does this? Like
19-year-old grad students,
even
apparently.
Right?
even then, I'm like, man, we all know that it's sweatpants and an oversized hoodie. Like nobody's
Yep.
playing. Like get out of here with that nonsense. Once again, these movies are ruining everything. They're not realistic.
That's where you draw the line.
That's where I draw the line. I can deal with the spirit, okay, spewing bees out of his chest. I'm good there, but don't give me that. Yeah, she's getting ready to cook steak in a white shirt with like, yeah, I don't think so. Um, now I want steak. Anyway, so yeah. So we kind of go into this final set of scenes, which is the Candyman has promised to release Anthony, the little baby, if Helen helps him strike fear into Cabrini Green's residence, which goes back to what we've been saying, where his whole shtick and all of his power and everything that he's about is about people being afraid of him and feeding his legend. So he basically, goes back on his deal and he is attempting to burn both Helen and Anthony in a pyre because earlier in the movie we saw Helen was talking with the little boy and he said we're getting ready for a bonfire and it was like this massive pile of junk out in a field and so she hears the baby crying and starts climbing up the pyre trying to find the baby. Um, as she finds the baby, all of the residents come out because the boy looked out the window and said, I saw Candyman. He's in here. I saw him with his hook. So they all start dousing it with gasoline and they're ready to light it up, right? They're all chanting, burn it, burn it, burn it.
Mhm.
They light it up. And as she's trying to escape, Candyman appears and grabs her and covers her mouth and tells her to be quiet and basically saying, this is how you become immortal. Like I was never going to honor this deal, all those things. So the flames, she ends up, and this was kind of weird to me too, because like Helen stabs him with the flaming plank. Like, okay, he's a figment. This is all a figment of her imagination, basically.
Uh-huh.
She is freed. The flames, quote unquote, destroy him, and she crawls out of the fire, literal hair on fire, everything. They put her out. She saves the baby. She passes away. Um, at that point, the I thought was a very nice touch at the end was when they were at her funeral and they had all of the residents from Cabrini Green coming to show their respects and they tossed the hook from the fire into the
Yeah.
hole with the casket. I thought that was kind of a cool, and you'll get why when we talk about the that kind of like that ending scene. But I mean, I thought that it was the symbolism for the pyre, kind of like her. Everything says fire is cleansing. So I feel like that was almost like the fire was cleansing her, being under his control. Like he can't control her anymore. But the
Mhm.
twist to that is, and at the end is that maybe she's more like him than she realizes.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. There's so much, like I said, and that's where you're spot on. I mean, the movie's so subjective. Like that's what I like about movies like this is like you can keep diving into endings like this and always come up with a different result no matter how you break it down. And that's what makes movies like this so genius. Like not only is it a slasher, but there's so many things that are built around this movie that are just genius.
Yeah, I totally agree. And so the next scene is the very end, and this is the only problem I have with the movie, and I'll explain. So once after the funeral's over, and they kind of go home, and they show Trevor, who is all, he looks like he's strung out. He's grief stricken. He looks guilty, right? Like for what happened, and he
Right.
looks in the mirror and says Helen's name 5 times. Why five? Like, come on. If he would have said it twice or 3 times, you know what I'm saying? Like, I just feel
Yeah.
like he had to hit that number 5 like on the head in order for this ending to like have come to fruition. So at first I was like, oh, I mean, I understand for the movie's sake, it was that way. Um, but it's just kind of funny to me. I was like, really? Like, I don't know if I would have said my dead wife's name exactly that many times into the mirror. Like, and especially when he knew that her like research was into this urban legend of Candyman. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But
Yeah.
for the movie, he says her name 5 times in the mirror, where now Helen's vengeful spirit appears behind him and hacks him into a bunch of pieces. And that's when whatever his little 19-year-old grad student, I think Stacy was her name, she comes in to find his body in the bathtub. And that was the ending scene where it was interesting because she still had the kitchen knife. So I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, is this happening again? Where it's like Helen didn't necessarily maybe intend for that, but it's going to look like she did, maybe she's going to be
Yeah.
committed. And maybe that was kind of the point where Helen kind of got her revenge both ways, right? She got two birds in one stone.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then
Well,
the last one was with, now we see the mural with Helen is dressed all in white with her
Hmm.
hair on fire, and that's what shows up in Candyman's lair. So I think that's kind of like that symbolizing that she's now kind of taken her place as, gonna be part of her own story, her own legend that's part of, tied to Candyman's. So
Yeah.
well, you know what's crazy about that final scene, and I agree. It's like it didn't fit for me. And as many times as I've watched this movie, it'd been long enough that I didn't even remember that ending. Like I
mhm.
always, like I always seem to remember the funeral pyre at the end, and I always seem to blank out that like fantastic gore at the end with Trevor dying.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, yeah, it's like what kind it's like it's almost like a it's trying to get you like at a aha moment, like okay, he's gonna say her name 5 times. I'm like, okay, this is kind of like
Hmm.
you're just trying to catch everyone off guard with this scene, which again it doesn't fit for me. But it doesn't hurt the movie for me, but it just doesn't fit, so I agree in that.
You know what almost would have been better, like in my opinion, like alternate ending. Like Trevor finds Helen's research and he comes across the recording where the woman's like, "Oh, you say Candyman 5 times in the mirror." Then he says Candyman 5 times in the mirror, thinking like, "What a joke this is," and
Right.
Candyman kills him. Like I almost feel like that would have been a more fitting ending than believing that now Helen is doing the same thing as a vengeful spirit. And then like because I agree with you, it did seem a little disjointed. I understand why they did it because it was kind of like symbolizing him growing his congregation, and maybe that's how it's done. Is like as he possesses these people and they kind of succumb into and they die, they become part of the congregation that helps spread the fear, not just him, right? He's just one
Yeah.
spirit. But if you can
Yep.
build the people, have people that fall into it, now you're kind of, I don't know, double and triple in your chances.
Yep.
Yeah.
So so
but
yeah,
i
so that's what I had on Candyman.
but see, that's where I almost think though, that's where I almost think, even though where Candyman was a fantastic film, that ending to Candyman, where I think that the 2019 film did a much better job of presenting that descent into madness with the main character, and then eventually showing Tony Todd's character at the end of the movie and
Yeah.
saying, okay, this is growing his congregation, the mythos of Cabrini Green in the building, where I actually thought that was a fantastic movie.
It was good. I liked that one, and I liked how it was because the main character was the baby from the first one, right? In that
Yep.
right? In that, yeah, it was
Yep.
Anthony was the main character. So like years later, he's grown up and starts kind of looking back into things, right?
Yep.
So I think it was a good one too, and I did like, I did think that it was a worthy entry in the series. It was better than like the sequels to this one because I thought the sequels to this just kind of they didn't. The second one was okay. The third one was really bad.
Yep.
It's been a long time since I watched them, but like I went back
Yeah.
and like watched some trailers and like watched some scenes from it, and I was like, wow, this is just like, like
I don't remember anything from the sequels.
yeah, yeah.
Like,
I mean,
out of sight, out of mind, man.
I love urban legend films, so like this is right up my alley. You know, like
Yeah.
Candyman, Bloody Mary, like all the I feel like all the ghost stories you hear, like you know, at sleepovers when you're a kid, and like people, you know, like all that kind of stuff is that's always interesting to me, and I like the idea of anything urban legendy. Which kind of makes me think if you guys haven't seen, have you seen the film Butterfly Kisses? Either one of you?
Mm-mm.
It's been a long time.
That's a fun urban legend one. I went on like an urban legend kick probably like maybe 6 months ago and watched it. And that one's a found footage, which was interesting. But I like a lot of because I'm like, hey, you know, urban legend. Who knows? You got Bigfoot. You got all kinds of. There's all every
Right.
state has an urban legend. You know what I mean? Like every state, all
It,
it's like
it started with something, so
right. And it like and that's kind of that's why I appreciate what Candyman did because they're like they went back to like hey, how did this story get started? Here's the original, what actually happened. And even then, maybe it was embellished. Maybe they didn't cut off his hand and put a hook in. You know what I mean? Like it could have been embellished. But the fact
right.
is, in this one, is that there was a man who was, you know, killed, you know, unjustly. And that's how this started. So, I mean, it's almost like, you know, what if, because I think he was in the original, was the son of a slave. Candyman was the son of a slave. So who knows? Like maybe the slaves made up this character to try to, you know, make people afraid of the, you know, unjust and inequality that they were facing too. Like a lot of
It's
times you see
possible,
stuff
yeah.
like that happening. So I don't know. I was glad I was so glad to go back and watch this one. I don't want to say like I hate that it took Tony Todd passing away for me to be like, let me go revisit like 92 Candyman. But a
Right.
lot of times we see when stars pass away, we're like, you know what, now we need to go back and watch it because it kind of it's fresh in our brains because I started watching other stuff of his. I went back and watched Hatchet where he played the remember like
Oh yeah.
the
The
voodoo
voodoo guy.
doctor or whatever.
Yeah, or like the tour guide or whatever he was. Wasn't that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was funny because like I hadn't seen Tony Todd in anything until we went to that damn film festival. Remember David? And he was in The Activated Man. Have you
The
seen that one,
activated man.
Matthew?
Yeah.
I that one I don't know.
So okay, so here's my gripe with like independent film. I never know when they actually release. Because
Yeah.
like if you go to their
Exactly.
wiki
Yeah.
page, it's like Activated Man released in 2023, but it never had a theatrical release. It's just been like touring around film festivals.
Hmm.
And so it's like when do these films actually release? And so sometimes it's kind of hard to track if it's actually in a place where people can actually consume it.
Yeah.
You know, but The Activated Man was a we saw it at Days of the Dead in January. Was it this year or last year?
I think it was 2 years ago
But it's
or
got
last year. Yeah.
yeah, it's Tony Todd, Kane Hodder, Andrew Keegan. Like it's got some names in it, and it's basically a like an expose on grief, where the main character loses his dog to cancer, and like the shock and trauma produces these like vision projections from this force
Hmm.
that he's dealing with, and Tony Todd plays like this, what is like a psychic medium kind of
Yeah, I think
and
that's what it was.
try to help him defeat this like this evil that he's basically seeing as a result of this trauma. But dude, Tony Todd, I could listen to that man read the phone book. I've said it 100 times. Like he just has this like aura
Phantasm
about him,
voice.
and yeah, he's got a voice like the Allstate guy, like, or should I say
Yeah,
the president of the United States from
you know,
24?
it's unfortunate. The last movie I saw Tony Todd in is I think about a week ago. I finally watched Stream. It was not my favorite movie, but he was definitely one of them that I was looking forward to watching in that movie. But
Hmm.
you know, he was always one of those names that if he popped up in a movie, I was going to watch it. you know.
Yeah.
And that's the respect that man drew for me. Not only, I mean, like, if you see that man's name attached in something, he drew that respect.
Right. Yeah.
And you know, like, even though people talk about Candyman, I mean, like go back to like one of his earlier films. I mean, the fact that he did an iconic character in the remake of the color version of Night of the Living Dead, doing Ben.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know, the fact of such redoing such an iconic film in color, and you know, and then just what he did for voice acting, and I mean, he did video games. I mean, the guy is just smattered all over the place, and
Mhm.
he needs his due respect. I mean, it it's sad, like you said, it's like so many people after his passing, the love and everything that he deserves and everything like that. And you know, you hear all these legends and their names getting brought up, then sometimes you feel like, you know, he needs his due just. Like he's absolutely iconic in everything that he's done. I mean, he even did, like, God, he was in some action films like The Crow, The Rock, like, I mean,
Mhm.
the dude's all over the place. I mean,
I
like,
mean, yeah, like Final Destination, Wishmaster, like there's tons of shit that he's
I was
done.
just reading his IMDb like credits, and I'm like, he was in Platoon, 21
yep.
Jump Street, the TV series, not the movie.
Mhm.
Let's see here, like all kinds of, yeah, Night of the Living Dead. Let's see, I'm trying to get in like Star Trek. He was in next. He was in Star Trek, The Crow, the X Files. He had then obviously all the Candyman movies.
Mhm.
I'm trying to think. We get into like, I mean, yeah, Wishmaster. Oh man, what else we got here? Yeah, Candyman, Day of the Dead.
So much good. And then
Just
the level of B horror. Oh my God.
Oh
They're like
yeah.
yeah,
Chef's Kiss.
yeah, all the
Chef's
fun like
Kiss.
Final Destination 1, Final Destination 2, Final Destination 3. I
I
don't
think he was in
Hatchet.
almost all of
I
those.
think because he was like the creepy like
He was
Undertaker
the
or whatever.
mortician. Yeah,
Yeah,
like the
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
mortician guy. Yeah.
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 And then
I'm trying.
I think there was one he played the devil. He actually changed it up and played the devil in one of them. If I'm
Oh
not
yeah.
mistaken, I could be wrong.
How
Hmm.
many movies have they made? Because I went back right around Halloween and I watched the first four Final
I
Destinations, maybe
think
five.
I think there's 5 or 6. I don't think there's
Okay.
any more than 6 because 6 is the one that like ties it all the way back to the beginning of the franchise with the
They're,
Yeah,
brain part
you
or
know,
whatever.
they're rebooting it again.
I
I
saw
saw
that,
that.
yeah.
I'm
Which I'll go
down.
see it. I'll see
I'll,
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
so I think I'm trying to think like the first one was great. Like I remember the idea of that one, but then like I feel like they got more and more ridiculous as they went
Once it
on. As
got to like
like
the NASCAR race and all
yeah,
that stuff, it
that was
was
the last
like,
one I watched, and I was like, okay,
yeah,
like
like that's the only good part is you watch the opening part to see all the chaos, and then after that, you're like, okay, I'm
I
good. Like some of them
I
were just weird.
I still think Final Destination 2 with the logging truck. That
yes,
still hits the
yes.
hardest.
Absolutely.
Still hits the hardest.
And
I, I still think when
anybody who sees those on the road, they're like, hell no, hell no.
That's the best part is like anybody who even non-horror fans like they're like I don't know why but I don't like getting behind a logging truck. I'm like I know why. It's because you all
Right?
have seen that one scene whether you've seen the movie or not. You've seen that one
You
scene and
know
you
of
know what
it.
happened. Yeah. So yeah, that would definitely God, I'm still scrolling through his like yeah, Activated Man was from 2023 it says. And
Okay.
then yes, Stream. I'm really sad to hear you say that you didn't like Stream because I was super excited to see that. And I actually saw I don't know if it was a Facebook post you made where you were like, ah, this was so disappointed. And I was like, damn it. It like dropped down my list when I saw that. Because I respect your opinion. And if you say like I'm not gonna not watch it because you say it, but I
yeah.
still will watch it. But I definitely respect your opinion on slashers. And so I'm like, man, I wanted to love it because Frenchie was hyping it up and it's got the Terrifier folks names attached to it. So I figured that
Yep.
at least the kills would be cool, and maybe they were. But I mean, what didn't you like about it? I'm curious now.
Well, it's like, when you talk about slow burns, like,
Yeah,
I anticipate that with 80s slashers, okay? But now we're in a different time now where you've got to catch my attention a little bit quicker, and we've gotten used to that with the Terrifier group, right?
yeah,
And
Right.
this movie for me just, man, it plodded along, and then when they did finally get to some kills, I was just like, okay. and like the acting was just like, I think too often at times we get all these horror icons attached, and it's like they think, okay, we're here for name alone, and it just did not hit for me. It just didn't. And it what is it? Like Randy Jackson? Nah, it's a no for me, dog.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, before we get in, I have one more thing I wanted to go through it before we wrap up. So, if you're listening, for all of our listeners out there, if you haven't watched Candyman and you haven't dived into the filmography that is Tony Todd, I suggest you do that. Go out to IMDb, look him up, watch the original Candyman. You can watch the whole trilogy. I guess there's 4 of them now if you count the reboot they did in 2019 or 2021, whatever it was, somewhere around there. And give the man his due, because Tony Todd was a film legend, and there's so much out there that you can consume of his. So, and there's so many things that you didn't know he was even in. So go watch Candyman, go watch the Hatchet series, go watch Final Destination series. Any of those are horror staples that I think you'll not be disappointed in any of those films. And you can see the man, the myth, the legend, the late great Tony Todd. So I appreciate Matthew joining and talking a little Tony Todd with us. Now, before we wrap up, I want to know, because we are into November, almost December. Matthew, what are your top 5 horror movies of the year so far? I know Nosferatu hasn't come out, and that may change the whole game based on what I'm seeing. But if you had to put it in right now, tell me what your top 5 horror are.
Currently, let's go with, and in no particular order, I'd have to say Azrael, Oddity, Strange Darling. What was the one that just came out here a couple weeks ago? Oh my God, I went and saw it and it blew my mind. Heretic.
Heard that was
and
good.
Then I'm gonna have to put, as much as people will hate this for a mainstream movie, I loved Alien Romulus.
Hell yeah. I loved it too. So
I saw everything on your list, and several of those are probably my top 5 also. I'll go last. The only one I haven't seen is Strange Darling, and I have seen a lot of people love it, and I have seen some people be like, I know there was the infamous video of like, this is not a horror movie, this is a erotic thriller, but I hear it's very good regardless, and that's the only one I haven't seen and I need to see. So, David, what is your top 5 for the year so far?
I'm trying to. Sorry, man. My brain is functioning on autopilot. I'm trying to think. I mean, I love Alien Romulus because I love the Alien series. I mean, I dug Long Legs. I really like that movie a lot. Fuck, there was like back-to-back movies you and I watched in the theaters, and I can't even think of what the hell they're even called at this moment.
We saw Winnie the Pooh, which is not
Blood
going to
Honey
be.
2. Was that
And then
this year?
yeah, and then we
Okay, yeah.
saw Romulus,
fucking
Long Legs.
Long Legs. What else was there? Like,
I mean, my list might while you're thinking,
yeah,
So I can go through my top 5. That's fine. So probably in no particular order. I've got Oddity is up there. I thought that one was great. I love folk horror, and I thought that was a ton of fun. And it didn't need to be gory, but it was just very, very unsettling. Like, I was uncomfortable in my chair watching it.
yeah.
Like a blind lady, like kind of plodding around a creepy ass old house with like a wooden like
With that
demon man
and
thing.
that trap
Yeah.
door.
Yeah,
You're like,
like that.
someone's
Like,
going down it.
yeah. So that one, no, Oddity was there for sure. I will also put Alien Romulus just because I feel like I thought it was good. I know Jim from horror movies and shit would probably be like, "Oh, you
Whatever.
guys suck."
Whatever.
Whatever, Jim. And then I will probably put at the third one, Long Legs. The fourth one, yeah, I'm gonna throw a little bit of a curveball here, and I'm gonna put Mads in there, from Shudder.
I
Dude,
still
that
gotta watch
movie
that.
fucking rips. It was so good, so damn good. I really like that one, and then I probably would have to say I made a list on my phone. Let me 1 second. I was gonna do like a video on it, and then I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to go through and do all these like give commentary. I was like, I don't have time to do this right now. But let me get. Oh, stop motion. That was the other one.
Stop motion ripped.
Stop motion was good. I had Infested like in my top 10. I had Late Night with the Devil.
That was good.
That could have very easily made it into the top. In a Violent Nature,
Yeah.
Exuma, Azrael. Those were all on my like top 10 list. Like we had definitely had some overlap there. But and you know
Mhm.
what? At number 10 on my list, I did put Terrifier 3 just because it's so far out of my comfort zone. But like it's for one set of scenes. You've seen it. You saw it, right, Matthew?
It's a fun watch. I loved it.
Okay, just the scenes where he goes into the bar and sees Santa Claus, I was laughing my ass off because he's like the little kid and he's like, "Oh, you're Santa!" Like he points to the wall, the picture of Santa, and then he points at him, and they're like doing drinks, and he spits the drink in Santa's face. I'm like, dude, this is hilarious. Like, I know people were like, they didn't need to do that. That set of scenes was meaningless, and I'm like, dude, that set of scenes like shows David Howard Thornton's like acting chops, and to be able to express all of that emotion without talking, it was fun. So it's hilarious because Matthew, I don't know if you know, but I never wanted to watch the Terrifier movies. David watched the first one, and I was like, "Tell me how bad it is," because I'm not a huge like gore fan.
Mhm.
And he was like, "It's pretty rough, man. There's this one scene," and then I finally wrote down and watched it, and then when me and Jim were getting ready to go to Miami for the Nightmare weekend, and they were having the Terrifier 3 had just come out, so we were going to go. He bought tickets to go see it. I was like, well, I guess I got to watch 2 before I go watch 3. And so I'm like, at this point, I'm like, it's one of those things where like I'm invested now. I'm down this road now. I'm gonna watch it the one time. And now it's funny because I don't think David's seen the third one yet. And so
That's it. I haven't seen that one yet. No.
And two was so bad. I had such low expectations of three, and it blew me away. I enjoyed it
Okay.
so much.
The second one was way, way, way too long, and
Absolutely.
2 hours too, I think. The third one's long too, but it doesn't feel as long as the second one. I feel like the last like 30 minutes, the scene with like the where they're in the house, Matthew, and like the rats and stuff, like I felt like that kind of stretched on a bit. I was just like,
yeah.
okay. Like, but it was funny because he kept slapping Sienna, and so it's kind of like, haha, like we're laughing here at the end. But yeah, I really the fact that I put it in my top 10 at the end of the year, I never that was not on my bingo card for 2024. So I'm
Right.
guessing that
Yeah.
but I just had a fun I truly do feel like Art the Clown has officially cemented himself as like a horror icon. Like he is, whether us old heads like it or not, or like, or think that there's no storyline and we want to argue about like the original Freddy and Jason and Michael. Yeah, sorry, he's an icon now. People love him,
Yeah.
and they're going to do it the fourth movie, and there's probably going to be spin-offs, and Damien and them are going to ride this thing. They're going to ride the hitch up to that cash train. I mean, it
Yeah.
made $85
Right.
million. I saw was the final ending tally for theaters for an
85?
85 million
Fuck
for a
you. That's
not
a lot
rated
of
or
money.
NC-17 base. Yeah, like, dude,
Holy
independent
shit.
movie. Yeah, so hell yeah. So
Damn. All
did you
right.
figure out your top 5 yet then, David?
I mean, I got what I got: Aliens, Long Legs,
Yep.
Late Night with the Devil,
Okay.
Oddity. I did like that one too.
Yep.
I really wanted to like Cuckoo, but I did not like that
I think Matthew's
one.
with you.
Absolutely.
Like it started out okay, and then it just got stupid. I don't know. After watching In a Violent Nature the second time, like I told you, I just fast forward through everything except for the kills. Um, I started watching The Mousetrap the other night, but I don't think I finished it. But I mean, I'll put the first Omen because, like I've told you, Ryan, like
Oh,
the
yeah.
original Omen is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. So, and I dug this one,
Right
the
on.
first Omen. So I'll put that in my top five.
I really feel like Nosferatu is gonna fuck all our lists up. I hope so much because Robert Eggers
Hopefully, yeah.
is a fucking G, and the cast is amazing. It looks amazing. Like even like
Mhm.
the people who are getting the private screeners for it now, and we're seeing some feedback, they're like it's every bit as good. And I'm trying to reserve judgment because when you see stuff this early for a major film like that, I don't want to say they're paid for their hyping it up and their positive reviews.
Right.
Um, but I'm just trying to reserve judgment, like because I felt like there's some other films that were. Oh, you know what? One was not in your list that I thought would be Matthew.
What's that?
The Substance.
Oh, you're right. I should have put that one in. The Substance one absolutely belongs in my top 5.
because because as of right now, everyone's like, that's my number one. Like that movie. Like if you like The Fly and body horror, I'm like, I still need to watch it. I know we can stream it on there's some weird streaming service that has it. I forget what it is.
Yeah, it's on Amazon. It's like Mimu. If you do it like
Yeah.
a 7-day free trial, you can watch it for free right now.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I was like, I've got enough streaming services. It'll probably come to Shutter like in a month or so. So
Right.
I'll probably just. But apparently, that one is legit when it comes to practical effects and is very well done. So that maybe that one will sneak in there. And if I do if it sneaks into my top 10, I might that means that Terrifier might just have to get dropped. I don't know.
Oh.
But anyway, well, I will let you guys go. We're getting late in the day. But I appreciate you joining, Matthew. Talk a
Yeah,
little Tony
absolutely, man.
Todd, a little Candyman, shooting the shit a bit. I'd love to have you back. I'd love to have you come back, once a month, and we can pick a theme or pick a movie, and we can just
Yeah.
get on here, and you can share some of your favorites with us, maybe that we haven't seen, maybe some stuff from your Retro Madness series. Which, if you guys haven't seen it, go check out Matthew's Retro Madness series that he did back in October, because he went through all 80s horror movies, and there were some fucking gems. I jumped in and helped him
Yeah.
do some reviews.
I
There are some
enjoyed the
movies,
list.
yeah, I had never heard of or forgot about, and then had a chance
Yeah.
to watch. So give Matthew a follow and check him out on TikTok. He's got great content, always good reviews. He's getting screeners now, so he's posting this stuff early and making me jealous. I'm like, damn, I got to see this movie. But yeah, he's killing it. So thank you for joining us, Matthew. I appreciate
Absolutely,
it,
man.
and you're welcome back anytime. We'll see if we can get like a regular cadence where we can do a Sinister Madness podcast episode.
Thanks again,
Absolutely, man.
guys.
All
Appreciate
right,
y'all.
Absolutely, man. Take care, Matthew.
we'll talk to y'all later. Have a good
Bye.
evening.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.